think that means we should be going live on the WKYC Channel 3 Facebook page right now. So I'm going to give people a couple of seconds, say hello to everyone who is tuning in. For a little bit of context, this Thursday, we have a half-hour special that will be airing on WKYC called A Turning Point Pride. Now, we had something similar air last year, and we did a half-hour special with the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland. And this year, they were able to bring Pride back in person. And so we have some different types of stories that will be airing with the half-hour special that is coming up in 2 days now. So we're very fortunate. We have some great panelists who are joining us for this conversation. I'm just going to introduce everyone and give pronouns, and then we can get going with the discussion. So we have Phyllis Harris, if you want to wave, she, her, the executive director of the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland. If you've done anything with Pride in the past couple of years, you have probably gone through her in some capacity. We also have Senator Nickie Antonio, pronouns she, her. She is a state senator from the Lakewood area. And she will be joining us discussing, well, she's actually going to be in the special as well, discussing a lot of the legislation that we are seeing that directly impacts LGBTQ people coming up this Thursday. And then we have Monika Veliz, and her pronouns are she, her. She's the president of Margie's Closet. I've been fortunate enough to interview you before, and I know you're going to have some great insight, especially with some of this legislation that has passed recently as well. And then Ken Schneck, who is the founder of Buckeye Flame, which I believe right now is currently the only statewide Ohio publication that focuses on the LGBTQ community. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So that is everyone. I can't check the viewer count, but I'm going to assume we're good to go. I saw the push alert go out, so that means that we are live. So I'm just going to start with this question, and anyone who wants to start can go ahead. I think that the kind of important piece that we're looking at this year when we talk about our Pride special is, where are we when it comes to rights and equality in 2022 for people who are LGBTQ+. And all of you are qualified to answer that question. So whoever would like to start, feel free to jump in, and we'll just make this a conversation.
Okay, well, I'll start because I'm dealing with it on the front lines. We all have our different lines, I think, our different front lines as a legislator, and also as the first person from the LGBTQ community to be elected and serve in the Ohio General Assembly. I identify as a lesbian. There's been a lot going on, but I want to be real clear. Nothing that the legislature has worked on, none of the horrific bills that they've introduced have been passed into law. There is a bill that was passed from the House to the Senate. The Senate hasn't taken it up, which is required for us to actually pass legislation. And then it has to either be signed by the governor, or the governor can veto any legislation, or the governor can just stand aside and let it go on its own. So there is time, though, to push back and to advocate for any hateful anti-LGBT legislation going forward. And I think that we have a summer of work to do to be able to do that. But I'm really encouraging folks to push back and to let legislators know, and the leadership, the president of the Senate right now, that we do not need or want those bills to go forward.
Excellent. I just want to point out how important what the senator just said, because it's hard to understand it all. I was on a call earlier today, and I'm supposed to know all of this. I am not good with data and legislation. I know that these are hurtful bills that set us back, in terms of the public discourse that happens around our lives. I feel like continuous education, we should not assume that we understand. I was on a panel earlier, and while I was talking about all of this legislation, I did not say, the part where it's not law yet, and I think that matters. I think I think we have a lot to do. You said a summer of work, summer of education, and making sure those within the community understand. We know that they're bad when we read them, and then somebody says, "Don't say gay," but what does it really mean? How does it, what's the work in regular people's terms?
Right.
I'd like to agree with Seven as well. I was at Pride, Cleveland, and I looked pretty historical. And I had a sign, that was, obviously vote no on Bill 454, which is attacking our trans kids, and all of the bills that are on the table are horrific in thought. And, there's a lot of Americans, myself included, who doesn't know all of, legislation and things like that. And you just hear these things and you panic and you freak out. And, to the senator's point and to Seven's point, it's important for us to say that it's not law yet, that we do have time to speak up, to act up, to push back and try to protect our kids. That is the most important demographic in this whole scheme of things, is that our children are being attacked constantly. So
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think on the flip side too, there are some bright spots in individual municipalities all over Ohio that are taking action to shore up protections for LGBTQ people. The city of Cincinnati just a few weeks ago really strengthened their LGBTQ protections. Right here in Northeast Ohio, the mayor of Cleveland Heights sponsored a sweeping change of legislation to ban conversion therapy and increase protections, and even install some rainbow park benches, which we like visibility as well. That's a wonderful thing alongside a crosswalk. So there are individual communities all across Ohio who, seeing some of the tide coming, and hopefully it doesn't go that direction, are proactively passing legislation to make sure their LGBTQ community in their individual municipalities are more protected.
And I want to point out, always a reminder, the Fairness Bill has been introduced. The Fairness Bill is a bill that would actually add protections to the Civil Rights Code in the state of Ohio on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. The bill's been introduced many times. This last time it was introduced, it had the most support, bipartisan support. So there are Republicans and Democrats who are lead sponsors on the bill. There are bills in both chambers. In the House, they've had some hearings. We're asking for hearings when we come back from recess. And so far, I've been told, yes, we can have hearings. It is that kind of a system that I function in, where the president of the Senate basically is the final word on whether we have hearings or not. So people should be paying attention to that. They should also be advocating. And again, telling the General Assembly that we want to have hearings both in the House and the Senate on a proactive, pro-LGBTQ protective bill. This is something that more than 30 states have already, and we just need to keep pushing that forward as well. It's so we can have some kind of a balanced conversation, but also understand, a lot of people believe we already have all these rights. That's been part of the confusion too. When marriage equality passed in 2015, a lot of folks thought, well, that's it. Everything's great. We got it all. And nothing could be further from the truth. But it's part of that information and education. The bill in the Senate is Senate Bill 119. I can't remember the number in the House because we've introduced so many different times, but it's easy to find if you just Google the fairness bill in Ohio. And that's also really important, that we keep having the conversation and that people keep saying, we want to pass this legislation. Because as Ken pointed out, right now there's a patchwork quilt of rights across the state, which are awesome. Unfortunately, you have to pick and you have to search and find, where am I protected? Where am I not? Where is my family accepted fully? Where are we not? And the fairness bill would just state LGBTQ people have rights across the state.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out. It's important to find the joy. The joy is there. The bright spots are there, but having a balance that, that we keep everyone in mind in the LGBTQ community when we're talking about, how are things, which is your original question, I think, Emma, where is the LGBTQ community? How are things, since marriage equality, given what we've seen in the media so far? Who are the folks? And I know that all of us are in touch with them here on this call. But really, that education piece, knowing that, we have people who are well versed on the legislative side of things and bills, and then working together, I'm calling them strategic alliances in a way that we can all bring our strengths to it. And that's what it's going to take. So where are we? We're all fighting together and figuring out how to do our work and be recognized for what we have to bring in this, I'm going to call it a fight for, rights and respect and protections.
I agree. When I became the vice president of this organization, my main focus was to try to galvanize LGBTQ people in Northeast Ohio. That's renewing our bonds with allies and, creating that stronger front line. We're all here. It's just, we're all sort of, sometimes we work a little separately. And because of these attacks, because of these conversations that are happening in the Capitol, definitely it reinvigorates, that galvanization, all of us wanting to lock hands, and like we have to fortify that front line.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing with within the trans community. We at Margie's Hope, I want to correct Emma, I'm not the president of Margie's Closet. I'm the president of the overall organization, Margie's Hope, which is a trans and non-binary organization in the state of Ohio. And so within the organization, I'm actually leading the charge to register trans voters who, may think, dead naming is a little triggering for some trans people. And so they try not to deal with it in all sorts of ways, even registering to vote.
Monika, can I interrupt you? Can you explain that for people that may be listening but don't know what that is? Can you explain that?
Sorry.
No,
problem.
Thank you.
So dead naming is the name that most trans and non-binary people are not anymore. They were assigned that name at birth, and they've changed their names to become more affirmed in who they are and happier within who they are. And due to laws, due to bottlenecking of court dates and birth, gender markers and things like that, some just don't deal with it. And that means for some, credit cards, registering to vote, just they don't want to see their name that they were assigned at birth. And so I'm sort of like trying to get the board to go out and start talking to these trans people and saying that doesn't matter. We have to, I understand that it is triggering, but these issues are way too important. They're way, way too important. It's more than just the name. We can lose our rights. We can lose our right to be happy, to live, to be just as effective as the rest of the umbrella. We will be silenced in the LGBTQ spectrum if we don't start participating. And some things are worth scooting aside. This is worth it. There you have it. That's what we're doing with the trans community. That's what we're doing with the trans community. Emma knows that I can go on forever and ever and ever, because I really want the trans people of Northeast Ohio to really dig in. This is the time. We have to vote. This is how we protect our kids. This is how.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Monika, please do never feel bad about correcting me. I think correction is how we all grow, and that's what we're here for in this discussion. But hearing specifically Monika and Seven talk, I think, you were both speaking about pride, and the origins of pride are very different than what a lot of people, I think, see as pride celebrations today. Now we see parades, and we call them parades instead of marches, and there's rainbow flags everywhere, and I just can't help but think, as I'm hearing this conversation, a lot of the things that you guys are talking about when it comes to organizing and speaking out and creating that collective, it really sounds like you're almost going back to the origins of pride and the origins of kind of how this whole movement started. So going off of that, I would love to know what you guys see as the biggest needs that we have here in our community, in Northeast Ohio specifically. We've talked about the state, we've talked about this legislation, but if there are things that your neighbors who are watching now could think about, or that you see that could be used in change, what would those top things be?
Well, I started, not started or restarted having more conversation about the LGBTQ community being a culture. So when someone comes to visit the center, I say, this is a community center, this is a cultural center, so that they understand that there's an opportunity to learn about a group of people who have traditions and who have history, a group of people who are marginalized, and so they're activists, and my activism might not look like Ken's or Monika's or anyone else's, but my activism, could simply be staying alive as a Black lesbian feminist in society, and even in the LGBTQ community, and what that means, and staying healthy. So I do think that learning has helped me. I knew the word Stonewall, when I was in my 20s, but it took me getting to the center 10 years ago to actually dive more into the first Pride was a riot. It's okay. Don't let people shame you because you don't know all the history, you don't know all the details, especially if you're living your life, you have your lived experience as a queer person, whatever that combination iteration that is. So I do think that be okay, open to learning about our culture, who we are as a people, immersing yourself in it if you need to. You want to learn about other things, so learn about us, and then for us to not feel shame or shame others if they want to have a parade, but not at Pride in the CLE. We're going to march and then we're going to party. We're going to have a festival. And I think, part of the change for us in terms of the center, even though we didn't always produce the Pride event, was that there were young people who said, well, so what are we? And they started being more, forcing me to come out about being an activist myself and about social justice. You know, I'm in a, you know, at the center in a meeting previously in the basement, and there's funders there, and I have staff come in and they're wearing abortion rights t-shirts, and they're wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts, and because all of that matters, you know, like in terms of justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, access, justice. So we're challenged every day, and I'm not ashamed of making mistakes and then picking up and learning from those mistakes. And so I think that there's something to looking at our history. I mean, what is it? The Sankofa bird, you know, it's turned back to look to be able to go forward. And so we're having that moment, and I think I like that it's lingering a bit, and that people really are happy to know that they understand the roots of pride now.
You know, and I was just at a event over the weekend. A new center for young people opened, and Phyllis and I were there in Fairview Park, and it's called Colors Plus Youth, and it's a youth center. And you know, there were parents, there were young people, and some of them are living their lives right now and know their own story. Mm-hmm. But just what Seven was just talking about, this idea that we have a history, and that when there's coming out for yourself, and what that means in your small little group, maybe of family, friends, neighbors, whatever. But then there is coming into a culture and a community. And for some people, that community has taken on the role of family, friends, and everything else as well, support system. And so I think it's important that and it changes with the people as they are members of. And so what I saw the other day, what I see with the involvement and the advocacy and activism that's going on with young people is really wonderful to see. And it's I came into all of this as an activist myself. I mean, I started out I was working on women's equality when I was in my teens, and so moved through and forward in my life along the way, and found myself in this place. But I bring all of my history with me, and that goes through HIV and AIDS, and all of the activism that we worked on then together. It is all connected. You know, what I know in this moment is that we have to make things better for everyone. Yes, indeed, we want to see LGBTQ equality, absolutely, and protections and safe communities, but we want those communities safe for everyone. It's all connected.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sort of like an accidental activist. I am. You know, when I started, when the former president was trying to encourage me to be a part of this whole helping other people, I was like, well, I am helping other people. You know, I'm friends with so-and-so, and I support, you know, my inner circle. And somehow I got, you know, dragged into this, and I was like, oh my God, my inner circle is much bigger than I thought it was. It's my whole community, whole community, trans people, just wanting to know it's gonna be okay. They just want people that are in leadership, be it in the LGBTQIA, nonprofit sector, or you know, politicians. They just want to hear everything is going to be okay. And you know, I have a saying where it's like, it might not be okay today, but it will be okay eventually. We just have to hang in there. And I'm gonna fight with you. I'm gonna sit in the trenches with you. So don't worry, I'll talk your ear off the whole time. So, you know,
you're not alone. You're not alone. That's what I hear. Yeah, I love it.
Right. And it's about us like nurturing each other. That is what we need to get through this summer. We need to be able to educate each other, have the access and the opportunity to educate each other and to nurture each other. Yeah. And so that's sort of where I am right now with where we need to be. I think that love will conquer all. I know it's cliche, but if we love one another, we can get through this together. Everyone.
I love that vibe.
Yeah,
I tell my team all the time, we are who we serve. Like, so we're like this, what a privilege, right? So you can work for the Heart Association and probably have somebody in your family that is dealing with some heart issues, but maybe not, and maybe not you, right? And you're still doing good work. But and for us, we are who we serve. When Ken is, recruiting journalists and writing something, writing it like from it's cellular, it's guttural. We are who we serve, and so let's treat each other like we deserve, which is hard because we're humans.
Ken,
right?
Ken, can you tell us, just in the 1 year of growth that you have seen of Pride celebrations in Ohio? I think that's almost a way that we can measure how things are changing at the local level. And you kind of had a great, just tell us the numbers.
Yeah, when we put out our first Pride Guide last year, when we first put it out, there were 16 or 17 that we listed, and we were feeling really overwhelmed by that list of 16, 17. And then people started writing us and saying, you left off this one, and what about this one? And there's also this one. And we ended up with 43, and I was exhausted. I'm like, well, I don't even know if I want to do this again. But we said, no, this is a nice statewide compendium of prides across the state. I just a few hours ago heard about Zanesville Pride happening this Saturday, wherever that is. I'm told in Southern Ohio. And so we added that on, and that now makes 87 grassroots prides that are happening across the state. We're not talking about, this bar is hosting this or this corporate thing is happening here. We're talking about 87 grassroots nonprofit organizations, or just a lot of individuals. Last weekend, it was an individual in West Liberty, Ohio, which is in Western Central Ohio. It just started Pride. And that's where it came from. It came from an individual who said, we shouldn't have to drive an hour to Columbus to experience Pride here in our rural community. Columbus is not our community. This is a rural area. I think it's 1.3 square miles, 13 churches, 1,800 people, and an amazing Pride celebration that was started by one person. So it's really amazing to have, and then an hour away, I think it was 17,000 people at Columbus Pride. And so they really do reflect the communities where they're being housed. And again, 87 of them. Now we're going to just go for 100 next year.
I think
so. If we were wondering whether Pride is everywhere and LGBTQ people are everywhere, I think that almost answers the question, because these are just the people who have stepped up to create these celebrations across our state.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And some of them are so specific to communities too, which is wonderful. It's amazing seeing this will be the second year of Dayton Black Pride, and they have such an incredible celebration there. Dayton LGBTQ Pride across the city is a wonderful day as well, but Dayton Black Pride provides an opportunity that they could not be more excited to have their second annual. So it's just amazing to see that across the state.
I think that's a great show of progress. The other thing that's happening that I'm finding that's interesting is communities like neighborhoods that are having neighborhood events are calling us to table.
What?
I
thought it was only me, but
it's happening.
That's great.
It's happening. So, that's those bright spots, right? That's the, like where we're, Divinity and Bridget from my team went to the Fairfax neighborhood to table, so I think, what we're seeing in terms of, folks saying, we can have Pride, we have Pride. There's other iterations of, some movement that's happening while the other stuff is happening, right?
Well, the pendulum swings back and forth, and all of us that are on this call are old enough to remember other times, both good and bad.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I always tell young people is it does get better. Things do change. And the more you take steps in to really be a part, there's a wonderful Sweet Honey in the Rock song, look it up. And it's, we are the people we've been waiting for, we are the ones. And that includes everyone who's listening, everyone who hears this later, that we're all a part of making that positive change. And that's what gives me hope.
The other thing is what you're doing is enough.
Yes.
No, people will get tripped up and, one of what you're doing is enough. Just do something.
And I just wanted to thank all 4 of you for being here. It is 7, so we're going to have to wrap it up. 7, we're going to have to wrap it up at 7. But I mean, honestly, just the fact that the 4 of you were available to do this during Pride Month, when I know that you all probably have 10,000 things that you are doing every day, we really appreciate it. So this is just the beginning of the discussion. We will hopefully continue it throughout this week. And again, on Thursday at 7 is when that Pride special airs. I've told you guys a little bit about what we can expect. We have some blasts from the past that are going to be in there. We have some stories about current legislation and how it is impacting youth. And we actually hear from the youth themselves. And hopefully everyone can get something from it. But I am so grateful to all of you for making yourselves available today. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.